All right, let's dive in and maybe rethink what we think we know about sales. This isn't like our typical deep dive into like closing deals and hitting those quotas. In fact, the article we're looking at today is by a guy who doesn't even consider himself a good salesperson. Pretty interesting, huh?
Yeah, it's kind of refreshing, right? Sales and the Madness of Paradigms. That's the article by Balázs Vendler. Really flips the script on how we think about sales.
Yeah, and Vendler, he's a successful business leader. He mentors people, so he's obviously doing something right, but he's the first to admit he doesn't fit that mold,
Right.
that like slick salesperson image. So what's he doing differently? That's what we're going to figure out today. Whether you think sales are great, you hate them, or somewhere in between, this one's for you.
Yeah, I think most of us have this idea in our heads about what a salesperson is. That stereotype of someone who's pushy, maybe even kind of sleazy. But even Vendler, he gets that. He even jokes about it. But he also asks us to think about where those stereotypes come from and if they're even true.
Yeah, that's so true. We all have those images in our heads, like, that used car salesman with the big cheesy smile. But Vendler's approach is different. He looks at sales as this chance to connect with people, to understand their needs, and then to offer solutions that actually help them. He's not pushing products, he's building relationships.
And that's a huge change in how we think about sales. It's not about that hard sell anymore. It's not about getting someone to buy something they don't need. It's about being a trusted advisor, someone they can rely on, helping them fix a problem or reach a goal. You hear people talk about consultative selling or solution selling. It's all about putting the customer's needs first.
Which makes a ton of sense. Have you ever bought something because a pushy salesperson talked you into it? Me neither. But when someone takes the time to actually listen, to figure out what I need and what my situation is, and then they offer something that seems like a good fit, that's when I actually get interested.
And here's what's really interesting. Vendler actually did this before he even launched his product. He spent like a year just mentoring people for free, getting feedback, and really understanding what people needed. It was like market research, but in a really authentic way.
That's a great example of customer development. It's all about building something people actually want, based on what they tell you.
Hmm.
It's a big part of the lean startup method, something any entrepreneur can use. Doesn't matter how big or small their business is.
Exactly. It's about getting out of the office, talking to real people, figuring out what they want, not just what you think they want. And who better to do that than the founder, the one who's really passionate about the vision?
And Vendler is big on that point. He thinks a founder's passion can be a powerful tool when it comes to sales. When you really believe in what you're doing, people feel that. It's like storytelling. You're not just selling a product, you're sharing a vision. And that's what gets people excited.
Speaking of stories, Vendler has some great ones about how he connected with people from all walks of life, really. He learned just as much from his electrician neighbor as he did from CEOs.
That's amazing. It shows how important it is to be open to learning from everyone. It's about making those connections, personally and professionally. Like he's playing a real-life RPG, gaining wisdom from every encounter.
And you know what's even crazier? He actually learned a lot from his competitors. He wasn't afraid to reach out, build relationships, and see what they were doing. It's a perfect example of co-opetition, the idea that businesses can work together and learn from each other, even when they're competing.
That's really cool. It shows a different side to the business world. It's not all cutthroat. There's room for collaboration and learning from each other. It's refreshing. And it reminds me of another point Vendler makes. Sales can be a great way to learn, even if you don't think you're a natural at it.
Absolutely. By getting involved in sales, you learn what customers really want, what their problems are, what they respond to.
It's like stepping into their shoes and seeing things from their perspective. You can't get that from data and reports. It's about real human connection.
And that brings us to the big question. What if you absolutely hate the idea of selling? What if, like Vendler, you'd rather people just come to you? He admits he doesn't enjoy cold calling or approaching people out of the blue. I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. The fear of rejection is real. I've felt it myself, even outside of sales.
Hmm.
Just thinking about putting yourself out there and maybe getting a no, it can be paralyzing.
And Vendler actually breaks down those anxieties we have about sales, the fear of rejection, feeling pushy or fake, not feeling confident enough. But instead of focusing on those fears, he says, think of sales like a role-playing game.
I love that analogy. It makes it way less intimidating.
Totally. He says, figure out your stats, your strengths, what you're good at, what you enjoy, what you don't. Then choose a strategy that plays to your strengths. It's about finding your own style, like you would in a game.
So it's not about trying to be some perfect salesperson from a textbook. It's about finding what feels real for you
Yeah.
and what works for your personality.
Exactly. And finding your own style, that's something Vendler keeps coming back to. He even makes this funny list of skills that are supposed to be important for sales: relationship building, communication, appearance, being reliable, being credible. The list goes on and on.
It's like he's joking about this idea that there's some secret formula for sales success. Because, come on, if we had to be good at all those things, we'd be superhuman. It can feel pretty overwhelming.
Right. And I think that's his point. It's not about trying to be everything to everyone. It's about knowing what you're good at and using those strengths when you're selling. So if you're good at building relationships, focus on that. If you're more analytical and like data, find a way to use that in your sales strategy.
So it's all about finding what works for you.
Absolutely. And that's what we'll keep exploring as we go deeper into this. But before we move on, I wanted to bring up something you mentioned earlier. Vendler's preference for letting people come to him.
Oh, right. His just drink coffee with clients line. It sounds so simple.
Right. And it's almost funny because he's talking about running a successful business, not just catching up with friends. But I think there's a deeper meaning there, even if it's not meant to be taken literally.
What do you mean?
Well, it might seem like he's oversimplifying things, but I think it shows how important it is to create a relaxed atmosphere, a place where you can build genuine connections.
So instead of a formal sales pitch, it's more like a casual conversation where you can actually get to know someone, see what they need, and build that connection.
Exactly. It's about making people feel comfortable enough to open up, to share their problems and their goals. Sometimes a chat over coffee can be more effective than a fancy presentation or email.
It all comes back to that shift away from hard selling and towards building relationships. We're not robots, we're people, and we like connecting with other people. When we feel like someone cares about us and what we need, we're more likely to trust them, to listen to them, and yeah, to do business with them.
And that's where Vendler's ideas are really powerful. He reminds us that sales is about human connection.
It's about understanding people, listening to them, and finding ways to help. It's not about tricks or manipulation. It's about being authentic and building trust.
And that's something everyone can relate to. Whether they see themselves as a salesperson or not, we're all selling something. Whether it's an idea, a project, or even just ourselves. The better we are at understanding people, building connections, and communicating, the better we'll do in life.
That's a great point. It's not just about selling products. It's about connecting with people, understanding them, and finding ways to add value.
And that idea of adding value, that's a big part of Vendler's philosophy. We haven't really talked about it yet. But he believes that the best way to sell something is to focus on the value it brings, not just the features or benefits.
So instead of saying, hey, this product has X, Y, and Z features, you'd say, this product can help you achieve A, B, and C. It's about focusing on the results, the impact, the change it can make.
Exactly. And I think that's a powerful shift in how we think. When you focus on the value you're creating, it's less about selling and more about helping people reach their goals.
It's about making a difference, solving problems, and making the world a little bit better.
And that's something I think we can all get behind, no matter what our job title is or how we feel about sales.
So as we move into the next part of our deep dive, I want you to keep that idea of creating value in mind. We're going to look at how Vendler put these ideas into practice. And we'll talk about some of the challenges he faced. But before we do that, what's standing out to you so far?
For me, it's that idea that sales isn't about some special talent you're born with. It's something you can learn and adapt to your own style.
I love that. It takes the pressure off, It means anyone can be good at sales, even if they don't fit that stereotype.
And even if you hate the thought of selling, understanding how it works can be really helpful in business and in life.
It's about connecting with people, seeing what they need, and finding ways to make things better. Those are skills that are useful no matter what you do.
And remember, even if you cringe at the word selling, there are ways to approach it that feel right for you. You don't have to be super outgoing to be successful.
It's about finding your own voice, your own style, your own way of connecting. And sometimes that might just start with a cup of coffee and a good conversation.
It's funny how we always picture salespeople as like really extroverted, outgoing people. But what Vendler's saying is that's not always the case. He even says his business partner is more of an introvert, but they're both successful in sales.
Right, so it's not like you have to be a born salesperson. Like you don't have to be the center of attention or a networking guru to be good at this.
Exactly. And that brings us back to that role-playing game idea Vendler uses, like choosing a character in a game. Maybe you're the charismatic bard, charming everyone you meet. Or maybe you're more like a quiet wizard, earning trust through your knowledge. The point is, there isn't one right way to play.
I love that. It's like a choose-your-own-adventure for sales.
Absolutely. And it means even if you don't love traditional sales tactics, you can still find a way to connect with people and share your work in a way that feels real.
So let's talk about some of those different approaches.
Yeah.
Vendler mentions a few options for founders who just really hate selling, even if they get why it's important.
Right, because not every founder is going to feel comfortable leading the sales charge, even if they're super passionate about their product. And that's totally fine. There are other ways to do it.
Like what?
Well, one option is to outsource it. You could hire a freelancer, a sales agency, or even a dedicated salesperson. That way you can focus on what you're good at, whether that's developing the product, marketing, or something else. Of course, it means letting go of some control, and it can be expensive, especially for a new business.
That makes sense. What else is there?
Another way is to team up with someone who loves sales, someone who enjoys that part of the business, and whose skills complement yours.
Like a warrior and a mage in your RPG party.
Exactly, each with their own unique strengths. Then there's the option of focusing on automated sales funnels.
Okay, what's a sales funnel?
Imagine it like a series of steps
Hmm.
that guide someone towards buying your product. It might start with an ad that takes them to your website. Maybe they sign up for your email list. Then you send them a bunch of emails, giving them useful info, building trust, and eventually offering them the chance to buy. A lot of this can be done automatically with software.
So it's like an automated path leading people to become customers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you hate face-to-face selling, this could be a good option because it takes away a lot of that personal interaction.
But it still takes a lot of work up front
Right.
to set up the system, write all the emails, and make sure it all works.
You're totally right. It's not just set it and forget it. You still have to put in the work to create good content and build those relationships.
So it's not about avoiding sales altogether, but more about finding a way to do it that feels right for you. It's like picking the right weapon for your RPG character. Some people want a sword, some want a staff, and some want a bow and arrow.
Exactly. You have to experiment and see what works best for you and your business. There's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Vendler's all about that, isn't he? He keeps saying there's no magic formula for sales success. It's about being authentic and connecting with your audience.
Absolutely. He encourages people to embrace what makes them unique and find a sales style that aligns with their personality and strengths.
That's so much better than trying to fit into some mold.
Right. It's like he's saying, break the rules, experiment, find your own way.
Okay, let's shift gears a little. I want to talk about relationship marketing. That's another big part of Vendler's philosophy, and it really resonated with me.
Yes. That's a big one. And it connects to everything we've been talking about, building real connections, focusing on the long term.
Can you break that down for our listeners?
Sure, traditional marketing is often about short-term gains, getting someone to buy something right now. But relationship marketing is different. It's about building lasting relationships with your customers, creating loyalty and a sense of community around your brand.
Like building a tribe of fans who love your product
Yeah.
and who believe in what you're doing.
Exactly. It's about more than just making a sale. It's about providing value, staying connected, and nurturing those relationships over time. It's like gardening. You can't just plant a seed and expect it to grow on its own. You have to water it, give it sunlight, and take care of it.
That's a great way to put it. And it shows how important it is to be consistent. It's not just about sending a newsletter every once in a while. It's about showing up regularly, engaging with your audience, and providing value.
Exactly. And Vendler gives some great examples of how he used relationship marketing. He talks about connecting with journalists, bloggers, and influencers in his industry. He didn't just pitch them his product. He got to know them, understood their work, and found ways to collaborate that benefited everyone.
He saw them as partners, not just sales targets.
Exactly. And that's what makes relationship marketing special. It's about creating win-win situations.
Kind of like how Vendler learned from his competitors, that same collaborative spirit.
Absolutely. And research shows that businesses that focus on strong customer relationships tend to make more money over time. It's not about a quick profit. It's about building something sustainable.
So it's good for your heart and your wallet.
Exactly. And there are so many ways to do relationship marketing. It could be something simple like sending personalized thank you notes or creating an online community for your customers.
The main thing is to make those human connections. Show people you care and build real, lasting relationships.
And that brings us back to Vendler's core message. Sales is about human connection. It's about understanding people, listening to their needs, and helping them.
It's about trust, loyalty, and creating value beyond just a transaction.
And that's something everyone can do, no matter what their job is or what kind of personality they have.
So before we move on, I want you to think about this. How can you use relationship marketing in your own work or life?
That's a great question to consider. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a freelancer, an artist, or anyone else, there are tons of ways to put these ideas into practice.
And Vendler's article is just the beginning when it comes to relationship marketing.
There are whole books and podcasts about it.
So if you're interested in building those long-term relationships, I encourage you to explore those resources.
Hmm?
But before you do, let's move on to the last part of our deep dive. We're going to unpack Vendler's coffee with clients analogy and see what it really means for building connections in sales. All right, let's circle back to that coffee with clients idea from Vendler. It almost sounds too casual to be real, right? Is that all there is to sales?
Yeah.
Just hanging out at a coffee shop.
Right. It definitely stood out to me, too. I think what's interesting is that it kind of breaks down what we think sales should be. No more presentations or pitches, just human connection.
Like he's saying, forget all the complicated stuff, just build relationships, which, when you think about it, is a strategy in itself.
Exactly. And it goes back to that relationship marketing idea we were talking about. It's not about making a quick sale. It's about those long-term relationships built on trust.
And sometimes the best way to do that is just to have a conversation. Get to know someone, no pressure, no hidden agenda.
Exactly. Create a space where people feel like they can relax and open up, share what they're struggling with. It's about building that rapport, that foundation of trust.
It reminds me of how we talk about networking. That word can feel so transactional, like it's all about collecting business cards and using people.
Right, like some kind of game where you're trying to win connections. But Vendler's approach is the opposite. It's not about what you can get from someone, it's about what you can give.
It's about being genuinely interested, listening, and finding ways to help. And I think changing your perspective like that can be really powerful. When you go into things with that mindset, it changes the whole dynamic.
For sure. It's not about selling yourself or your product anymore. It's about making a connection and figuring out how you can add value. And that usually leads to those win-win relationships we were talking about.
So maybe we can't take coffee with clients, literally. But it shows us something important about sales. It's not about tricks or pressure. It's about real connections and trust.
And finding your own way to do that. Like we said before, there's no one right way. Some people might love those casual coffee shop chats, while others might prefer something more formal.
The important thing is to know yourself, your strengths, what you like, and find a way to connect that feels real and comfortable for you.
And remember, it's a process. You don't have to have everything figured out right away. Be open to trying new things, learning, and changing your approach as you go.
So let's go back to that question we started with. Can anyone be successful in sales, even if they hate it?
I think Vendler proves that the answer is yes. You don't have to fit the stereotype to do well.
It's not about being super outgoing or smooth talking. It's about being interested in people, understanding their needs, and adding value.
And finding your own way to do that. Maybe it's coffee with clients, online communities, or telling stories that connect with people.
So as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with this. How do you connect with people and share what you do? What makes you different? What makes you stand out? Embrace those things and find a way to bring them into your interactions.
Because the best salesperson is someone who loves what they do and who can connect with people authentically.
And that's something we can all work on, no matter what we do or what our personality is like.
And remember, this deep dive is here for you. You can always come back and listen again.
That's all for this deep dive. We'll be back soon with another interesting topic, ready to break it down for you. Until then, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.